What I think is so interesting about that is that it is common, I'm sure, in fact, with people who I've tried to describe this to,
Sure.
who think, as you mentioned, about puppets being, well, you put your hand in the sock puppet and you make
Yeah.
movements. And this is something entirely different. This is the equivalent of a stage production, as Lelani, as you said, not just in the sense of the operation of it and building the stage and blocking the scenes, etc., but in terms of learning the role and internalizing the role as any actor on stage would have to do. Is that right?
Exactly.
We're one of the most technically sophisticated puppet theaters in the world. So the puppets themselves and the costuming is really only one small component of all the various different things that we have to think about when we're doing a show. And in fact, when I was fresh out of high school when I went there to apply for a job, and I told them I want to be a puppeteer, and they kind of laughed at me. And they were basically trying to say that nobody that works here is just a puppeteer. If you're going to work here, you're going to have to learn every aspect of this. And it's interesting because a lot of times that's partially why we offer the backstage tours. You would be surprised by how often people think that they're automatons, that we just push a button and then we sit back and relax and the show does itself. But really, in fact, everything at our theater is manual. Nothing is automated. So even little things, if you see a light coming up or a curtain opening, there's always a human being there moving a dimmer or pulling a string. And so when it comes to actual rehearsing, the actual stage dynamics is one element, but we also have to focus on everything else that's happening off the stage and all the technical things, all the lighting, all the
And that's
sound
where
components.
you come in, Lelani, right, as the stage manager?
That's where she
That's
comes
right.
in, yes.
Right. So you make sure everything works, the curtain goes up on time?
She does.
So where did you learn your stage management craft? I mean, because this is the same as any full-size theater, right?
It is, and the guys have been very gracious. It has been on-the-job training. They helped me, learn how to become a puppeteer, and in knowing what the puppeteers actually have to do, then you know what sort of backstage things need to happen, and it's really just making mental notes and actual physical written notes of all the little details that go into each of the productions.
So how do you manage both? You're under the stage controlling a puppet, and you're the stage manager making it all work. Doesn't that seem like a lot to do?
Well, I'm not the only one who is doing a lot.
A lot of barking orders. And, we try to, typically during the rehearsal, we try to work out any kind of weird little kinks that might occur. So usually the shows themselves actually go rather seamlessly. There's usually very little communication between the puppeteers. Sometimes if something starts to go wrong, we can kind of communicate with weird eye symbols and sign language. But
it's one of the benefits of working together for how many years?
Yeah.
And you just kind of know.
How many years, in fact, have the two of you been working on this?
I'm one of the newer ones, but I've been with the theater for 3 years.
I've been there. I think 2012 will be 12 years. So
yeah, you're a veteran. Right?
And we all, I should point out, it's kind of a trial by fire for us all when we start off there in terms of learning these things. I think less than a week after I first went there, they had me on stage doing a role, and it was terrible. I did a terrible job, and unfortunately there are videotapes, so I'm constantly reminded of my terrible debut. And
I keep thinking, I have to stop for a moment, because the way you talk about this, I love, is you talk about your first experience on stage.
Yes.
Right? It's just the way an actor would approach it. You're on stage. It's not the puppet on stage. You're on stage.
Yes.
Right?
I think puppeteers, we're kind of introverted extroverts. Like, we like the idea of performing and being a performer, but we're very shy people. Like, I could never put makeup on in a costume and go on stage and do these types of things. But when I'm living through this inanimate object, then I have the freedom to be more open and extroverted about it. So
something your brother said to me when we were at your theater, I asked him about. I made some sort of comment about, well, mastered puppetry, and he said, "Oh no, I don't think that you ever master it. Like music, you can always get better.
I agree with that.
But you never really become a master, right?" Yeah. So I say that because I'd actually like to ask you to do a few movements with one of the puppets, because I was so impressed at the way they move. And just a minute ago, when you were moving the hands.
Well, they're called rod puppets, and this is the crucial rod here that controls the hand here. It's spring steel, and they're attached to the hand. So when we actually move this rod, we control the arm. So the arm, we can make the arm go up, we can cause the hand to move inward or outward. And that's basically, through both of these rods here, is how we control the functioning of the puppet's hands.
So that in particular I found so remarkable when I saw the show, that as they sing, the hands move the way you would expect a human singer on stage to move.
And that's one of the many things that separates this type of puppet from other puppets. You know, marionette puppets are very common. There are other puppet troupes that will perform operatic scenes with marionettes. But
And marionettes being you control them from the top,
above
right,
with strings. Yes. And you know, there are some really, really amazing marionette puppets out there. But there are certain things that they have inherently more difficulty doing than these puppets. Handling of props. This type of hand mechanism here makes it very easy for the puppets to pick up props and to handle them, candles and weaponry of various different sort. And so that's one thing. Also, the fact that they're operated from below and we don't have all the strings from above, that gives them a lot easier time walking through doorways and doing certain types of activities like that. But the hands themselves on these puppets is one of the most important functions. That's actually kind of how you sell the singing, because of the fact that the mouths don't actually move. So through the head movements here, we can simulate the idea that she's singing, but really the hands also kind of sell it. So if you have many male puppets and many female puppets on stage, the audience needs to know which one is singing, you know. And actually through the head and hand movements there, that's how we're able to point out that this is the puppet that's singing, you know.
In fact, you mentioned that the mouths don't actually move, but when we were backstage, one of the people who was in the audience
was arguing about it. Yes,
said, but I saw the mouth move.
They say that, you know, they say, I saw the puppet's teeth, I saw them moving the mouth, and that's actually a very good compliment to us, because that means that we're really kind of selling the illusion of the puppet actually singing. But it's all really through the head movement. You know, we have an up and down mechanism that controls the up and down movement of the head, and then we have a side to side, and those mechanisms there basically control the singing effect. Then we also have the back string here, which enables them to go back for high notes if they're singing a high note. And then, of course, the legendary walking mechanism that enables them to walk. And she actually does, in fact, have legs. You can't really see them because of this costume, but she does, in fact, have legs.
She doesn't mind you showing off her legs.
She's, you know, she's very open about that.
One of the other things that I am impressed about is the fact that this is an art form that was handed down almost from one generation to the next to you and your current crew. It's something we don't see much of in modern life, where a troupe of artists or a great craftsman, for example, would hand off a shop to a young apprentice.
Yes.
But that seems to be the tradition here in puppetry.
And it is, in fact, it's that sort of apprenticeship is kind of a dying thing, I think. Nowadays, everything's gotten so technical, and you know, when people try to learn a craft, it can become very technical, whereas for us, it was more, from the minute that we met Bill and Paul and Will Harder, the puppeteers that were there when we started, they were like family to us. So we would, even when we weren't performing with puppets, we'd be at Bill's house, you know, building puppets and set pieces. We spent holidays with them. So right off the bat, they kind of became like our second family. And I think that's how it kind of progresses, that when you're working in such a peculiar field as this, and as Bill was getting older, he knew that he kind of needed to find a way to keep the art form going. So when he met us, I think he was kind of happy to find other weird people that he could sort of, you know,
were equally taken by
it. Yeah, it's something that when you encounter it, you know, it becomes a labor of love right off the bat. So.
And do you feel then that at some point, you guys are both young, but at some point you're going to need to look for the next generation to come up and hand off to?
I've already been trying to pass it more on to her, even though actually she's, you know, we're kind of comparable in age, but definitely it's you know, Bill Foster, his biggest fear was that they would end up in some stuffy museum somewhere.
Not being used.
Yes, he felt as though it's kind of like a musical instrument, you know, it's built to perform. And the minute that you just have it like hung up on a wall doing nothing, it's kind of not fulfilling its purpose in life. So that's a very important thing for us. As I move ahead. You know, we're actually always open to finding new puppeteers, and when young people come that are interested, we invite them under the stage to try the puppets out, and we kind of watch them to see who's got some abilities, so that
And that's
we
one
can,
of the benefits of having the backstage tour after
Yes.
each of the performances.
I guess I didn't pass that test, right? You didn't recruit me
you know,
afterward.
you've got some skills.
We're keeping you.
Yeah, keeping me in the background.
Yeah,
in the back of the mind,
Absolutely,
yeah, yeah.
yes.
You're on the short list.
Yeah, there you go. As you do this art form, though, we discovered it because a friend of ours did research, was actually looking for
Wow.
whatever happened to the Kungsholm
Yes,
puppets,
sure.
and came upon your theater. So how do you work to promote it, and how do you get the message out? Not just that you're there, but what it really is. You know, as I found when I went there, it completely defied my expectations.
Sure. There's a lot of what I would call guerrilla advertising. We print up flyers and stickers and posters, and there are lots of different places around the Chicagoland area that will let us put up a flyer or a poster and things like that. We have a very, very small budget to begin with, and what little budget we do have is usually put towards maintenance and the building of things, so we don't really, when it comes to advertising, there's not really any budget whatsoever. So we try to get away with the free forms of advertising as much as we can. Now, there are a few other avenues, just, occasionally we'll be fortunate enough to be featured on a television show like this or a radio program, things like that kind of help spike the attendance, but usually our actual main method of getting the word out is just word of mouth, is hoping people that do come to the show will enjoy it enough to tell their friends and families.
Which we have, by the way.
Oh, we appreciate
Told
that.
many of our friends about this. I will tell you, though, it is a difficult message, because when
Yes.
you say, "Oh, go see the puppet opera," people kind of look at you cross-eyed and say, "Well, I don't like opera and I don't like puppets. Why
Yes.
would I go do that?" And the answer, in my case, is that because it so defies your expectations,
Yes.
you need to go see this to understand it for real.
I'll tell you, actually, my own mother, growing up, she hated opera. A lot of people are like that, they who haven't been exposed to the art form. So when she heard that I was working there, she's like, "Oh gosh." But
My son is lost to me.
yes. But then when she came and saw the show, she was completely mesmerized. And I think that even people that don't enjoy opera as an art form, they will enjoy the show in spite of that fact, just for the stagecraft of it. And similar thing with puppets is a lot of people will say, "I'm not a fan of puppet shows," because they think we are doing this, goofy thing. But when they actually see our scenery and our puppets, and they see everything, the action being played out on stage, then they kind of look past all their preconceived notions, and they're like, "Wow, this is completely something amazing that I didn't expect it would be,"
Well, that was certainly my reaction. And believe it or not, we're already out of time. So would you
Wow.
like to have one of your puppets wave goodnight?
All right, Lock May, give them a nice little wave goodbye. Come
There we
visit us
go.
at the theater.
Okay. Well, Justin, Lelani, thank you so much for coming here, and I wish you the best of luck, and we'll be back to see you soon.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for joining us once again on Public Perspective.